Chris Knight. Welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on tonight.
I'm your host, Kevin.
And I'm co-host Brian.
And you're now tuned in to Coder Conversations. If you want to reach out to us, visit us at www.coderconvos.com. But yes, absolute pleasure having you on the show, Chris. Tell us a little bit about what you do. Talent acquisition specialist. For the audience who may not know, what is that exactly?
So I'm looking for kind of recruitment for specifically data and AI sector, but broadly speaking, anyone in IT really. Basically, just placing candidates that are showing promising talent in roles that are related to data or the AI sector. For example, like MLOps, machine learning, those sorts of roles.
So AI and machine learning, that's like a very hot sector. I know like the salaries must be pretty crazy right now.
Yeah, there's it's pretty good. I think that in the UK there's a I mean, especially I suppose the US as well. It's a big market. A lot of things are exploding. There's a lot of opportunities, and it's one of those where it's still a case where you can, if you've got those kind of skill set or you transfer those sorts of skill set, you can get those big salaries, and there's not too much in the way of competition for roles. Whereas things like I found that data science, those sorts of roles are a lot more competitive than they ever used to be. Previously, when I looked into those sorts of roles and kind of placing people, it was a lot harder to find. But nowadays, it seems like it's almost, I don't want to say 10 a penny, but it's definitely a lot more competitive than it used to be. So yeah, that's the space to be in right now, I think.
Very cool. How did you get started in the industry, just in tech in general?
So I worked for a SEO agency so many years back in during, it's just kind of before COVID, and that agency was pretty successful. It grew from nothing to kind of a very big company with kind of hundreds of writers and things like that. It was kind of global. What happened was that company had an analytics arm as well as an SEO arm, and that was also successful. But what happened was the two founders went through a process of demerger, so it split off into there, and I went and joined the new entity in analytics.
Okay.
So what happened was when I joined the seed funded company for the second one, I was then tasked with kind of, because we were a very small team then, tasked with kind of scaling operations. So with that, I had a nice little budget to help with some hires and kind of ramping up operations, as well as like taking charge of the sales department, which meant that it was kind of like a delicate balancing act between scaling. So from there, I was hiring lots of digital analysts, that sort of scene. And then when I moved on to conversion rate optimization, so that was pretty successful. And after 3 years there, I then moved on to another company in digital analytics. And then from there, I've gone back into the recruitment sector, but in the data and AI space. So that's how that was born.
So yeah, you've been in recruiting for a while. So like, what have you noticed in terms of trends, like in terms of the skills required, the skills demanded? Like, what has it shifted to? I know at one point, like general programming, like JavaScript was big. Now it seems more so moving towards AI. Like, what have you personally seen though?
I mean, Python became pretty big. I remember even, Python's became kind of huge. Almost every, kind of job out there sort of requires Python. I mean, not in the digital analytics world so much, because that's very much JavaScript based. But yeah, Python, especially with machine learning, those sorts of things, everyone's kind of using Python. But I'd also say things like prompt engineering, these sorts of roles with the rise of AI, ChatGPT, these sorts of roles didn't really exist before, and they're kind of becoming an amalgamation of roles like prompt engineer and analytics engineer. And I think where we're leveraging AI to do more and more, I think it kind of becomes that we're kind of using agents and other things. So yeah, roles are kind of getting amalgamated to such. But yeah, Python would be, and prompt engineering would be probably the things that I haven't really seen, or have seen a huge rise in.
I know the tech market is it's incredibly difficult. It's not really easy to get a job. So, you pretty much have your pick of candidates. So, when choosing amongst such a wide array of candidates, what like really makes one stand out versus the other for you to pitch them to the client?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a really, really tough market. I will say, especially like I mentioned in data science, those sorts of things. So the things
Yeah.
I'd look for to get into kind of like an A tier is one is like obviously years of experience, relevancy of experience, and then they kind of lead with metrics. So things achieved that are tangible. You can showcase a client that you've brought something from X to Y, and then the journey. If you're great at storytelling, that's also another way of kind of a good way of setting yourself apart, or doing something different with, like, I don't know, maybe video. But in terms of
Right.
in terms of uh, beating other candidates, is very tough. Once you've got the entry and the experience, it's not so bad. But I would say years of experience, those kind of recommendations, and then the metrics is the key for me. So that
So
would be
what would you suggest, someone that's maybe more entry level with Python and machine learning, what would you kind of recommend them to do to get themselves more out there, more visible to recruiters? Or, is the entry level not really being looked at by recruiters right now?
I think in this field it probably is. There's a lot. Definitely, I would say so. So for machine learning, I would say, if you're getting into machine learning and you've done software engineering roles where those sorts of things before, I definitely take that into consideration. So those sorts of things in that shift, you've obviously got a prior background. It's just kind of a little bit of a shift. So those things are good. I would say that. Uh, yeah, in terms of entry, otherwise doing voluntary experience in a new workplace, just to try and gain some experience, or
Yeah.
doing freelance projects. It's just to get just to have something on the resume. I think that always looks good.
You
Uh,
want some like real world experience. I think a lot of companies, they'll see, an internship, but they'll see it's kind of like, if you've only put it this way, if you've only done self projects, little study projects at school, that's very different than if you interned at a major company for 6 months, let's say.
right.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, when that employer is picking the person, they're going to say, well, this guy or girl, they have 6 months of experience. Maybe it's not paid, but does that really matter? It's still that real world experience. So could you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I would say so. If I would 100% look for to choose a candidate on based on that. So yeah, I mean, if you can kind of get that industry experience, uh, there's very different, um, between having academic, your academic skills, whereas versus your commercial. So going into a real world scenario, and kind of showcasing your skill set, and helping drive a business forward in a certain way, and then having them vouch for you to say that you've done this and it's been successful in this regard. So um, yeah, from there, I think it's a lot easier. But it's just that first role. So Yeah, because obviously then it's easier for a recruiter as well to then pitch that to a client that you've done something commercially, and then that relevancy then applies to that role. Also, for example, for a recruiter's point of view, if what you've been doing at a commercial company matches up with something at another company that's commercially in the same regard, doing something, for example, RAG AI, using that sort of system, then yeah, it makes it a much easier sell from my point of view to someone who's been working purely academically.
Like from your personal experience, what are the primary platforms that recruiters are on that people looking for a job they really should be focusing on? Is it like LinkedIn, Indeed, or
Yeah,
Monster?
yeah, LinkedIn, Indeed, GitHub. Having a great repository is good, so you can always showcase your repository. If not, also doing, if you're going to do things like contracting projects on Upwork, I'll look at those sorts of things as well, because I want to see your reviews and how you've performed for clients, and how many stars, or what their feedback was. So I want to look for any kind of holes in the armor, and then if you're coming out shining with loads of glowing reviews, then you're going to be someone I'm going to be looking to take forward, to put to market for a job, because ultimately you want to put your best candidates forward, because you're the best representation of yourself as well. So yeah, that's your brand. So you don't want to damage the brand on your end as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what would you say? Okay, so an entry level person, you're recommending, okay, definitely try to get an internship somewhere, get some, real world experience. Above and beyond that, what would you tell someone that's entry level to do to kind of get on a recruiter's radar?
Yeah, so I would look for, one thing I've always said is to go on to the jobs that your kind of ideal are. Look on like LinkedIn. So if you've got a certain job that you're after, and it lists certain requirements, I'd go down those requirements. So for example, like whether it's agentic AI and it comes up with LLMs, and then Python, all these sorts of things. And when certain skill sets keep reoccurring, but those are the ones to really refine on, and set yourself apart, because you remember you've got to be better than the next guy. It's a really competitive marketplace and world out there, so you've got to really hone down and focus on those if you want to get the next job. So that's what I would say is how I would do it. Then things like the GitHub repository, I know a lot of guys that I've worked with, and they're all kind of looking to check out someone's GitHub, because they're obviously comparing them to other people, and they want to see what the work that they've been able to produce. So
I
those
think,
were
yeah, the GitHub is definitely important. I used to do software for a little bit, and I know I didn't really get looked at until I put React and Angular projects in my portfolio. Because before that, I had stuff like Java, Java Spring, and that just wasn't, at least in the entry level market at the time, that wasn't really a need. They were bringing on more so medium or senior level Java developers. So I had to switch it. When I got out of school, I had to switch up from Java over to JavaScript, and then start doing React, start doing Angular. And then I started to notice that recruiters and companies started to notice me once I had that on my GitHub. So it's interesting that you say that.
Yeah, for sure. How did you find the market when you were kind of looking, Brian, in those times?
I mean, this is years ago, maybe 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I found it difficult, but I don't think it's anything like this market. I think this market is not really comparable to maybe anything that's come before it. I've never seen so many people out of work on LinkedIn, especially people that are a little older. I saw someone, I think they were in their 50s, and they said, look, I have 25 years of industry experience, but I'm not being hired because I'm being told, oh, you're you're overqualified for the job. So they tell them that to kind of like bypass them, but they're sitting there on the sidelines and they're not necessarily getting looked at. So I think that that's a real issue, because if you can't value the talent that has put in all these years, then what does that really say about the company where they're only going for young engineers or whatnot?
Yeah, it's quite scary. I've also seen a lot on LinkedIn about, with a lot of open to work banners and those sorts of things. I mean, obviously we had 2019, we were kind of blessed with a huge kind of tech bubble and a boom where everybody was kind of, it was a candidates market, and it was very different to how it is today. But now, like you say, Brian, I think it's gone the other way, and it's very much the client's market, and we're in a position where there are a lot of talented people who are out of work. Like you said, there's a lot of people who are potentially overqualified for roles, but I think the fear is that once they get another offer, and I've come across this as well, where I've found people that
Yeah,
I've pitched before because I've thought, fantastic, they have all the skill sets and more, they're easily qualified for this position, but the client's fear has been that once they find something else that's a higher pay grade of what they're potentially more used to, then they'll
sure.
just jump ship, and that's their kind of fear. So but
Yeah,
I
that's
completely
that's
agree.
problematic. That's definitely
Mm.
problematic. I mean, if you were to speak to kind of the older engineers who are in their 50s or in their 60s, what kind of advice could you give to them to maybe make them, a little more relevant in this market right now?
Mm. Uh, I would continue to just kind of keep plugging away the numbers game if they're kind of overqualified for the roles, and continue going chasing the roles that are probably best suited to them and their skill set. And then if it a worst case scenario, I drop down to that to the role that may be the lower grade if they're desperate for kind of that money situation. But I mean, they ultimately always want to be kind of chasing that next step in the ladder in your career, and kind of mapping out your career in a way that you have like an ultimate end goal, whether it be some people SVP, maybe others prefer more of a C-suite directorate role, and you kind of map out your career and how you kind of prospect that to be over the course of time, and you always want to be kind of chasing that rather than short-term salary. But I at the same time also realize people have bills to pay, and there's and mortgages and things. So at the same time, I would say if needs be, then take a potential drop, and kind of make yourself as
Right.
most appealing as you can, or showcase a way that you're going to stay for a long term, or maybe take a short term pain for long term gain, and jump into something that might, in a way that you can show that you'll work your way up in a company for a little bit longer, and showcase some value. So that might be another option.
So it's pretty tough though, sounds like.
It is definitely tough. It's
Yeah.
definitely a tough market.
So just like from
Mm.
what you've seen, what is the pathway from just, let's just say, senior developer? How do they get to the C-suite or upper management? Like what does that actually look like in terms of job progression?
So I probably, for a developer, I'd probably say like the end goal would usually be, I mean, everyone individually is different, but I would always ultimately end up with the chief technology officer or something like that. Would be the role for a path of a developer. And with regards to how they get there, um, every path is different, but I would kind of aim for, if I was kind of telling a developer how to do it, I would probably say, they have a certain amount of projects, and then they look to achieve what what their goals are in the company, and then try and go above and beyond that in other ways, look to kind of exceed and excel expectations, then they'll usually go to something like a lead developer. So probably start with junior developer, then senior developer, then maybe a tech lead, and then maybe more of a management position where they'll have people underneath them, and then from there it would be
Right.
more of a SVP, directorial, and then finally like a CTO role, where that would be kind of the path that I would foresee a developer going down.
So CTO, is that kind of, what you would go towards ultimately? Is that for developers, is CTO the highest you can go, or are there roles that are higher than that?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, chief technology officer is the highest kind of suite for a developer. But then from there, I mean, it just depends. I'd say that the ceiling is kind of different depending on the company that you're working at. So, for example, if you're working at a small startup, that the ceiling might not be for something like a CTO role, might be not too high, whereas you could go to a big company like a Google, and you'll have a role that's maybe slightly lower, but you'll
Right.
get a much bigger band. So I always kind of aim for the shift to come over, get the experience, and then shift over into a bigger company where also there's more structure in larger conglomerates, or big corporations. So it's kind of they're looking for people to kind of work their way up the ladder. So I think that's kind of a good way to go. Also, those brand names are recognized everywhere, which is another great sell.
Yeah.
The interview processes are pretty strict. So yeah, it's a really good way of kind of selling yourself. Once you've got one big brand on there, like a Google, you see it on LinkedIn all the time. People put ex Meta, ex
Yeah.
Google.
Yep.
It's just their way of kind of, it's like I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt,
Yeah.
and
But
yeah.
do you find that you find yourself gravitating towards those people that have like the ex Meta, ex Amazon? Or are you looking at that as, well, they're probably too qualified. They're just gonna, jump to Google the next chance they can get. How would that look for your business?
For me, I like the branding because of I'll say that it gives me a good grounding for they've got a relevant experience in, and they've obviously been hired by a big company, so they kind of, I mean, that kind of sells itself a lot to a lot of kind of other clients. But with regards to circumstances, everyone's kind of circumstances are different. So some people like the shift. I've noticed a lot of people going from big companies to small companies because they like the fast pace, they don't like the red tape, and then that kind of change suits them. So sometimes it works best that way. I've personally gone the opposite way, but yeah, you get a lot of people that are kind of moving across that. So I wouldn't rule it out, and I kind of prefer to look at how someone's performed based on numbers, and that's how I kind of like a storytelling CV to come across as to what they've done in what roles and how they've progressed their their division or their company from X to Y, and their kind of how they've got there. That means more to me than a brand, but the brand does have a weighting.
As you mentioned before, goals, having strictly or just narrow down your goals. Short term, what are you going to do first? What are you going to do in 6 months? How's that going to look in 2 years? What's that look like in 5 years? Would you say that the people that more so have their career mapped out in their head, are they more hireable, or does that not really matter?
I mean, I don't tend to ask too much to people initially once they're looking for the next job. These kind of the other thing is that, like, for example, in the AI industry at the moment, with like the agentic stuff, the RAG stuff, and the LLMs, everything's moving so quickly that it's very hard to predict what's going to be happening in so many years. Like, I mean, even just like the privacy points of view. So it's a case of, I mean, you could have an idea of where you want to be, and I think that's great. And that is what I would definitely say to map something out. But for example, where these roles have kind of been invented and software engineering is kind of slowing down in certain respects in certain places, then it means that everyone's kind of going through certain shifts. So career trajectories might kind of take a little bit of a change of direction, but it definitely helps. There are people, I think, being driven in a career to go for a certain goal and kind of push for that, and then asking questions to why you're not there and how you can maybe switch things up and change the focus to get there is good. And I think it's healthy in a career. Whereas if you're kind of maybe too much go with the flow, you might not question, and you can kind of maybe get stuck in a certain remit.
So yeah, those people that don't really have a direction, would you say it's harder for them to get hired because they're not, saying, "Oh, I'm this type of dev," or "I focus on this kind of technology." How is it versus, people that have that like really narrow view of, okay, I do X, Y, and Z, versus someone that's more of a generalist and they say, "Oh, well, I do Java, I do C sharp, JavaScript, TypeScript." What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, so typically when I see something come up, if I see a role and let's say it's got a certain criteria with C sharp on it, and someone's CV is littered with C sharp, and they're very C sharp specific. They've done a lot in accomplished companies. They've showcased use cases where they've done a lot with it and things have gone very well. They've maybe fixed things, or and they've end up saving the company. Those sorts of things, I think, okay, this person clearly knows what they're doing, and then I'll bring them forward for interview. Whereas if someone says that they're a bit of a generalist, and they kind of spread themselves too thin, there's the kind of that phrase where jack of all trades, master of none. And it kind of pushes you away from that person and more towards someone who's specific. That's why I think it's definitely better to be more specific in a certain focus area to try and get that next role.
Yeah, that's really good advice to, just because I've seen that too, where someone's more of a generalist. They have all this, they do C++, they do C sharp, they do JavaScript, they have all these different skills, but someone looking at their resume might say, "Oh, this is kind of looks like, this guy or girl is just kind of like jumping from job to job, position to position." They don't really have a clear goal of where they're going. So I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Kevin, I think you're muted.
So for somebody that hits like the senior developer level, what often keeps them frozen in place? Like what keeps them from progressing to the next level? Let's just say management or team lead, just from what you've noticed.
I think usually that's kind of from that sort of level. I think a lot from what I've sort of seen is from my time is that people it sort of becomes a choice at that point. Some people like to work autonomously alone, and that works for a lot of people. Like a lot of developers like to, they've got tasks they like to focus on, and this goes for recruiters and other positions as well, where people like to focus. They crack on their own. They're not interested in managing a team, and that can be that can be one point. Some people like to be very tech focused, and they like to just dive into the code, and that's completely fine. But from the point of view of kind of scaling up and kind of building your career to the next level and at a certain stage, then I think that management experience is what someone needs to work on. But it's not for everybody.
So, like in terms of just general skills, I know the industry is sort of moving towards AI, but do you still foresee like a healthy market for standard developers, like standard Java, JavaScript developers, or do they really need to lean into learning AI as well to be hireable?
Yeah. I mean, those there are still roles out there. There's still plenty of them. I think it's just there's going to be a little bit more maybe dilution where there's a lot more competition compared to what there used to be, and then there'll be a lot more openings to in the kind of AI space where there's just mass investment worldwide. It's kind of like a huge bubble of kind of funding, and these sorts of things are kind of opening positions where it's kind of like almost like an arms race in terms of AI with these big companies where everyone's kind of racing to
Yeah,
the
feels that
ultimate.
way.
Yeah, it feels like countries, these big tech companies as
Yeah,
well. It's the profits and they're racing towards it, so they're prepared to pay for these roles, and uh, so MLOps and things like that are kind of they're yeah, they're great kind of roles, great things to kind of learn and kind of push your career to the next level, and kind of make that shift. But with regards to software engineering, stuff like those traditional roles will still always be there. I had one come up recently. Also, this was another one that was fairly full stack, and they just wanted a slight element of AI in there. So these things they'll always still be there.
okay. So the last person that you hired, what was the main thing that stuck out about their profile or their resume that made you say, you know what, this is the guy or this is the girl for this role. I'm gonna submit them.
So the last one was probably about 4 people I put forward, and they were very. One had some. Well, a couple of them had some very good brand experience, and they had a great tech stack that was kind of matching the description. They'd been rehired by certain companies. One had been rehired. The other one had some really big brands. In fact, both had really big brands, and you could see from the experience, and they had like master's degrees in relevant fields. It just kind of all told a story of where their career was leading, and you could see there was quite a clear transition, the way that the CV had been structured and put together, and then where they were kind of ending up. And it was it was really impressive on both of those CVs. In fact, I was happy to put them forward. I kind of grade them in like the A tier listing that then they're most likely to go ahead and secure that role for the job,
Right,
and
right.
best represent the brand.
So our longtime listener Eric, he makes a great point that managing isn't for everybody. So, like, if somebody is thinking about making a leap towards management, where would you say that it is for them versus it isn't? Like, what would be something that what kind of personality type is not necessarily a fit for management, and maybe they should stay in a more individual contributor level?
I think there is it's definitely a personal thing. Some people naturally really like are kind of like people orientated, very, people's, we would call it a people's person. I'd say I'm quite a people's person. I quite like working with others.
Extroverts, right?
Yeah,
Extroverts.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If you're quite, introverted, and you like, diving into your work and getting into the weeds, and solving problems, that can be kind of one thing. If you don't like to be, bothered, that can be kind of signs that you'd be great at doing implementation work, and kind of operating as like a solo contractor. And that would probably be where I would recommend, if someone is looking to make the most out of their career skill set. They're a bit of a seasoned sharpshooter in a specific field, but they don't particularly want to go into managing other people. Then working as an individual contractor is probably the best way forwards, in servicing certain niches, and getting compensated pretty well for it.
Now, have you seen, let's say, introverts have a tougher time kind of reaching these CTO levels? What does that look like, just from your experience?
I mean, I've known people who are pretty introverted in the tech field, who've actually gone on to run companies quite successfully. So I would never say that it's the be all end all. It's just that those kind of, and I think those in the tech field typically tend to be pretty introverted. We all like to kind of crack on with our work behind a screen, which kind of puts us probably under a certain bracket. But yeah, I wouldn't say that it ever kind of holds us back. It's just a case of whether you enjoy managing a team, and that's kind of for you, because obviously that presents its own challenges of managing people's expectations, as well as making sure the team's performing. You've also kind of got to, it presents a lot of challenges in terms of maybe there's something that's target led, there's achievements or things that need to be done, and you need to kind of find the way of getting the best out of certain people, and certain people react differently to different management styles, and all
Right.
this is kind of like it's almost like an art form. There's everyone kind of gels differently with a different person or different management style. Some people, are more hands off, and then other people are more authoritarian, shall we say?
Most I've come across that, where it's almost like you're being micromanaged. You got one
Absolutely,
boss,
yeah.
then you got the boss above that boss, and they're checking in on you, and then your main manager's checking in on you. At this one recruiting firm I was with, it was like that. I'm not going to mention who, but I found it kind of jarring. I really didn't enjoy that style. I'm more of an introvert by nature, so I'd rather kind of be left alone to do my work.
Yeah, I've seen and worked with. I will also not name anyone, but I've seen softwares where there's like time trackers, and they'll take screenshots every 3 minutes, track mouse movements, and it's very extremely intrusive. But not only that, is that it kind of conditions you to like just move the mouse even on Teams calls and things like that. So for example, if you're having a call like this, this would be seen as maybe unproductive time. It would track the apps and things, but if your mouse strokes aren't moving, despite the fact you're on maybe a call, it would track that as kind of like idle time.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so those sorts of things, especially in roles where you're kind of
How common is that, where you're seeing this real intrusive stuff going on?
not too common. I've seen it on contracting platforms, and I've seen it more in it was a certain workplace that I've seen where yeah, it was seen as a necessary evil was the quote.
Yeah, for sure.
So y'all know the tech industry is notorious for ageism. Like at a certain age, it's harder and harder to get a job. So, like, would you recommend someone that's maybe getting on into their 40s, going into their 50s, to maybe shift to management because there's less ageism at that level?
That's a good point. I mean, I wouldn't discriminate against a certain age, and I think that as you age, you kind of have a different perspective. Um, so with regards to that, I probably would say if you could, also because you have a bit more wisdom. So if you can kind of shift into management when you're a little bit older, then I think that's a great point. Yeah, and I think older people generally you tend to typically look up to your elders naturally. So
Right.
as a point in management, I think it is definitely good to try and transition that way as you kind of get older.
So like the people I'm really seeing having problems getting hired, they're having anywhere between like 0 to maybe even 3 years of experience. So from what you've been seeing lately, like people with that level of experience, what are those who are actually getting hired with that level of experience doing versus the person who's not getting hired?
Yeah, so that's where I would kind of say is the kind of the hard spot is that 0 to 3 years, because you've obviously got experience, but after 3 years you kind of have that safety net. 1 year kind of I feel like is, you know, I think with every year that passes, it makes it that little bit easier to get that next role. Once you've
Right.
got 3 years under your belt, then you're looking a bit more solid. But 4 years is when you're sort of thinking that you've gone from like you've surpassed the entry, you surpassed junior, and looking at like the middleweight territory by this point, 4 to 5 years, and then you're kind of entering into, you know, as you go towards the 10-year mark, maybe like super heavyweight, heavyweight 20, yeah. So, but primarily up to like 4 to 5 years. So, what I'd say is the different. I mean, there's always going to be a value for people at certain levels. So, like your entry level, you always have the same. You kind of like your tiered, and basically it would just be down to experience again. It would be a case of if someone had done something in 3 years and they've got some great background of what they've done in those 2 to 3 years, and it looks like that they're really going to apply themselves into the next role, then yeah, I'd completely put them forward if they're doing really good things. I wouldn't be deterred. And a lot of jobs, they look for those people that are in with 2 to 3 years. They don't want someone to come in at that heavyweight level. They want someone of those sorts of 2 to 3 years, and then someone else to come in and lead them and a team and kind of build it out that way. The only things that would kind of put me off is that like those sorts of gaps where maybe they've done 2 years and then there's been a year break, and something. I mean, sometimes things happen, and I wouldn't kind of, and that's understandable. But if there's kind of things that make you question where maybe someone's been out of work because likely they've been fired or something like that, then it kind of yeah, it shows some alarm bells.
So how important is just any sort of experience? Like Eric, a longtime listener, mentioned that he's recommending his students to even just do volunteer work. Sometimes you just got to work for free just to.
Absolutely. That's how
Yeah.
I started.
Yeah.
I just reached out and said, "Look, I will do some." And it was just like grunt work in the agency. I did like the low level tasks, and then I just I've got really quick at them. And then, just these more and more things kept happening, and it was kind of a case, well, I could do that for you as well. What else can I do? Why don't you show me this, and then I'll learn, and I can do this for you as well. And then before I knew it, by that point, they were interested, and then it was a case of, well, yeah, we can get you to do X, Y, Z. And I actually, these positions came up, and I think you'd be great for it. And then it's literally got kind of spiral from there. But if I'd never done that work initially, then yeah, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I would say that for all kind of, for anyone who's just trying to get in, break in. I've got friends who've worked for the BBC, and they worked. My friend, she worked in unrelated field, but she was literally started her career making tea
Wow.
at the British Broadcasting Channel, yeah. And she now scuba dives in the Galapagos for them on like film sets and things. She's doing all that, but initially she couldn't find a job, so she volunteered and ended up making people tea, and she's gone from there. It's just a case of right place, right time, showing up, showing face, being a good person, and kind of showing value. Then and then people give you that chance. Might not be
Right.
initially, but yeah, it's just building it up.
Something that you mentioned before, the one of your recent candidates that you submitted, you said that they had a master's degree. So I wanted to kind of touch on that in terms of, 2025, 2026. What is it looking like for people who do not have the bachelor's? They do not have the master's. How competitive are they realistically? How competitive are they with people who do have these degrees?
Okay, this is so for me, this is I think this is also going to be a cultural thing as well, because I know in the States you have a college career and things kind of operate quite differently, where it's a huge kind of culture shift. So I've spent a lot of time in the States as well. It's that you have a culture where you have like a college career. Your colleges are kind of a massive campuses, and you have like it's very competitive, and then you have there's be like a college status, and that kind of follows you for the rest of your life. I think, whereas people will say, I'm alumni from here, or whereas in the UK, it's not typically, people don't see the bachelor's as the be all end all, so you can get jobs without it, and that's kind of a lot of what's happening is people will get jobs without it, and you're kind of more deemed not what you did years ago, but what you've done most relevant, most recently. So, for example, there are people who might be in some of the biggest corporations in the world, working in the UK, UK entities, and they don't have bachelor's degrees. And I've seen this as basically more a case of just what they've done recently, and that they've kind of worked their way up. But those sorts of opportunities in the States, from my experience, from the time I've spent there and the people I've met, though they don't really come up, because people base, and they're always asking about your college degree, where they don't really do that over here. It's kind of like, it's this over here, it's kind of seen as maybe like the stepping stone to the next level, but you'll never get asked
Right.
about your degree again once you've got your next job. And once you've got your next job,
Mm.
everyone only asks about the most recent experience, and then maybe a little bit, but no one will go back to your college degree. The only reason I mention it is because in the field of machine learning, where things are fairly new, and it's kind of like a very new market, if the roles don't go so far back, because there's not too many people that have been working on these kind of new systems for so long, then I'll look towards their university degrees, where they've done master's degrees in machine learning and those sorts of things, where they've done. So, for example, I've had people that have done software engineering to a certain level, and then they've shifted, come over to the UK, and they've done, they've worked at big brands, and they've come and they've done machine learning as a master's at prestigious universities, and then they've then gone on to start another role. And then from that point, I can think, well, because there's not too much in the way so this is still new, then I'll qualify the academia, and then the role from thereafter, and obviously the software engineering experience from before, as opposed to looking solely on a college career.
So yeah, we've kind of went over the positive hiring signals, those traits that make you want to pitch this candidate. But what are some of the red flags, like where you look at this resume or you look at this candidate and you it signals immediately, hey, I might want to stay away. Like what are some of the things that people who are not getting hired, what are they doing?
So I look like big things I've seen is a lot of things on LinkedIn where maybe people don't have like a big follow account, and it looks like they've kind of basically gone on ChatGPT and thrown together a profile that's basically geared around a job. So it has no social credibility, and usually they'll give me I'll see the CV and it's basically just been AI generated just to match, I don't know why, to try and get themselves through the door, to hopefully get another job. But those sorts of things, that'd be one. I've seen that a lot recently, a lot. And I'd also say things like gaps in CVs, where potential firings, those sorts of things, doesn't look great. Or what else would I look for? Red flags. What
about like they're posting crazy things on social media? Is social media something
that would be a no. Yeah. If I get something like a social media post that's completely going to be a miss in the cultural fit, then that's I always aim for, and things like politics as well. I just don't think that there's any place to kind of post about those sorts of things. It's always best to just keep your opinions private, because you never know who you're gonna end up working with, and it's best to always just to kind of there's no need to pick fights or online, and
you really never know who's reading it. So
exactly,
be very careful about that, guys. What was I going to say? I had one last question for you. Basically, okay, so when I went to school for coding, my mentor, my teacher said, look, if you want to get a job in software dev, web dev, you got to build up your LinkedIn. You got to get some recommendations. You got to get followers, connections. And he said, because the industry kind of lives on LinkedIn to some extent. And I've definitely found that to be true. But, I took his advice and then really ran with the ball. I just kept adding tons of people every single week for a couple of years. And now I'm up at 50K. So, I kind of took his advice to the extreme. But what do you think about that when people say, oh, you got to, beef up your LinkedIn?
Yeah, I've had exactly the same thing when I started. Everyone in the industry is on LinkedIn. We're the same as I've always heard, like, to beef up the LinkedIn, make sure it's kind of offers suspect. I mean, yours is incredible, Brian. You've got a massive following on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
Kudos to you.
Thank you.
But I mean, I've also heard at the same time is the relevancy of connections is also. So sometimes a lot of people will preach that, like when you're releasing posts and things on LinkedIn, obviously you get a lot of people who lurk in the dwell time, and if you've got people who are irrelevant, like for example, if you're connected with loads of your target market, if you're selling a certain thing, or if you've got loads of hiring managers and you're looking for a certain role, and you kind of keep posting things about maybe what you've done, or today, like if I wanted to show that I'd done some C# work and I was hoping that some hiring managers would see it, then I want to be connected to loads of hiring managers and I'd be wanting them to see it,
Yeah.
actually liking it, and then other hiring managers will then see it as a ricochet effect. Whereas if you have loads of people who are, I don't know, maybe you've got loads of postmen or something, and then you post, and then those sorts of people will see it, then those sorts of things are not as relevant. But yeah, I would always say I'm the same as you. I'm advocate for kind of beefing up the LinkedIn, trying to connect with as many people who are relevant as possible, build that one up, add the recommendations, and kind of get those relevant contacts. We're in the sales market has also changed, and the hiring market's changed too. It's kind of a case of you build your relationships. It's kind of, that's the way people are kind of selling and buying nowadays. And it's gone to the days of the cowboy kind of builders. So those strong, lasting relationships are what kind of builds trust, and then people will know you're a safe pair of hands in a certain industry, and they'll lean on their partners to do the same, for recommendations. If you don't have something, then you probably go to the market and you ask for your connections, for if they've ever used somebody who does a certain thing, and then they'll recommend someone good in a certain space. And that's a lot of what I'm seeing in the tech industry. So one, that's a case of don't damage your brand, and two is a case of building up the network, and yeah, kind of safeguarding yourself and building relationships. So that would be my best advice.
And as you said, relevancy. When I was building my network, I was only adding tech. So when you go on LinkedIn and you're looking at, I think it might be the feed, or I'm not sure what section it is, but you see it says, okay, we recommended X person because you both went to the same school, or this person also does JavaScript, so we're going to recommend that you add that person. So what I did was I just focused, okay, JavaScript, IT, anything close to that, coding, anything close to that. I just started to add and add and add. And I ended up with a very large network of basically tech professionals, which is, I've gotten multiple jobs just from LinkedIn. So it's definitely powerful.
Yeah, it is powerful. It has a, yeah, it's great in that respect. So building the network is, as they say, the network is the net worth. Also, it's one of those things that, with a large, I've known, there was a guy who I came across, and he said that it was between him and someone else for a job, and he got the job. They were pretty neck and neck, and the job basically went down to the size and profile of his LinkedIn, because he had a huge network.
Wow.
And that was what they based the final decision on. It from what he told me. Yeah.
That's
So,
kind of crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize the importance of branding yourself. Like, even though you're an individual, you're still a brand, and companies, they want to make sure your brand aligns with theirs. So like, for my final question, how important is it to like stay involved in the community and to keep posting, to stay visible, even when you do have that job?
Yeah, I think it's incredible. There's a lot of people, like, for example, social media managers. Practice what you preach. If you're not kind of building up a LinkedIn and building up a personal brand, then you might be building up a company's. But I still think it's important. The same with all of our roles, everything that we're all doing, we need to be showing our personal brand, show our values, that we're a cultural fit for roles moving forwards to other positions, because we want to open doors for ourselves, not just for maybe network sales or our next position, hiring managers. You never know what opportunity. Plus, the more visible and the more you're posting, the more impressions. You're going to use your profile like a landing page, and that's exactly what it is you want people to kind of visit you. You want your search optimization to be up. You want people messaging you for whatever reason. And if you go ghost mode on LinkedIn and you're not posting, it's going to be a lot more hard for potential recruiters, potential hiring managers, potential sales opportunities, anyone to reach out to come across you. So you want to be posting all the time. I'd say if you can, once a day is probably optimal. I try and schedule it for the same time every day that kind of crosses over with the UK US time zone for it. So in the UK for me, that's 2 p.m. So it still hits both the UK and 9 a.m. US time. But yeah, I would say if you can, once per day it would be great. If not, no worries, just maybe a few times a week, or just build it up once a week to 2 times a week, 3, 4. But just whatever's possible. But I would never want to go silent on LinkedIn. It's you never know what opportunities are presented. You're presenting yourself to your industry. So
yeah, like we said before, you never know who's looking at your profile. You never know who's looking at your feed, and they see something like a red flag. They say, oh, this guy's into X, and we can't have that at this company.
Yeah,
so I mean, we got to be careful. Yeah.
It's free marketing as well. So, you use the free tools where you can.
Hey man, amazing interview, but we're at the top of the hour. Before we get out of here, did you want to leave our audience with any closing thoughts, and where can they find you at?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn. Appreciate your time, guys, and the interview. So, yeah, if anyone wants to find me on LinkedIn, Chris Knight, working for Xperis. So, yeah, I'm more than happy to have a chat. If anyone wants to connect with me and have a personal interview, then no problem. I would love to have a chat. So, I appreciate everyone listening.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate you, and we appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time.
I'll see you guys.
Thanks.